Hi, everybody. James Dallas here. I'd like to speak for a minute about what I consider to be some rather unfortunate um, misinformation that has been spreading on the internet about the Texas floods that recently happened. I'm a former resident of Central Texas and someone who has lived through floods in Texas. And, I definitely have a great deal of concern for friends out there who have acquaintances or acquaintances of acquaintances who are impacted. One of my college buddies is a justice of the peace in the Austin area and has had to be involved in inquests when people have died from this flooding. So, I take this very seriously, and I don't like the fact that we have, frankly, a lot of conspiracy theories going around. You can see this summer. You've got people like Mike Flynn, who has always been out there spouting just the craziest stuff. Marjorie Taylor Greene. This video, I think, was recently shared by somebody in comments on a Facebook post saying, look at this, look at this. So let's look at this. Let's look at this and then take apart what he's saying.
Hi, my name's Steve Jarvis. Do y'all want answers for what happened in Texas? You want answers? I have the answers. And you are going to have to do some research on how to get it. But
yeah, we're going to do the research. And note that, again, he's trying to claim that he has all the answers. I think the one answer he has that we agree on is that there was a tremendous amount of moisture in the sky in Texas July 4th weekend. And that is what his first picture is showing, a satellite image of Texas.
here's your picture right there of Texas and the big flood. Okay, July 4th.
And the point I want to make about that is that the reason why there was so much moisture in the sky is that you had the remnants of tropical storm Barry that were over Texas at that time, and Barry, came in from the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico, and then sort of swirled north into Texas. And for anyone who remembers Hurricane Harvey or any of the other storms that have hit Texas, I'm a graduate of the University of Houston. I remember when the law library got flooded. And Houston, when that happens, when they get 30 inches of rain, it spreads out because Houston is flat. Central Texas has got those narrow valleys and a ton of little narrow valleys where the water really has nowhere to go except up, basically. So again, you have this remnants of a tropical system hitting at night where people don't have a lot of warning. But let's continue.
And all those little girls missing, I bless them.
And I agree, definitely a lot of concern for the victims. But note, he's going to try to pull your heartstrings several times in this video.
Bless their families. But I want to tell you, all of this flooding in Texas and Rainmaker has publicly available NOAA docs on their cloud seeding project. Everyone must start this investigation. If you want to know what happened, this is where you start.
Okay, we're going to look at those, although I will suggest just straight out the bat that this has very little to do with what happened.
Everybody's showing all the flooding and everything. I'm giving you the documents, I'm telling you. So what you're going to do, you're going to go to the NOAA library, right? And you got to scroll down to the bottom of the page, but you'll see this is weather and climate collections. So you're going to scroll down to the bottom of that page there, and you're going to type in Texas. And what you're going to find is, you're going to find this, I've highlighted it here. You're going to find, and it'll tell you.
Yeah, I sped it up just because this gets a little bit tedious, but we will look at this website in a moment.
When they were seeding, okay? Because let's face it, folks, 30 foot of water in an hour at 4 a.m., people didn't have a chance. So when you get down here,
again, heartstrings.
You're going to find out is it'll pull up a page like this, and you pull it up, and then it tells you the companies. Isn't that exciting?
No, it really isn't, but I'll show you in a minute why it isn't.
You want to know answers? Here's what you need to do. You need to call your governor, call your senator, call Chip Roy.
Okay, and this is where it becomes obvious that he's grinding a political agenda. He starts doing a lot of self-promotion about like his work to make weather modification a crime, and his belief that rain is being stolen from his potato crops and all this stuff. Anyways, let's see.
What you can do, what it does, it shows West Texas WMA right here. Rain enhancement, hail suppression. It tells you
So we'll talk about what that means, but no, he's not explaining to you what this document actually is, and I'll explain it to you when we look at it.
On these documents, it tells you exactly the company is Rainmaker, and that's who's doing the cloud seeding in that area. What you can do is on all these documents, there's tons and tons of these documents, but it's so much to read and go through here. But you can
Yeah, and reading documents doesn't matter if you don't understand them, which I think will become obvious in a minute.
bring this up. Now, listen, there is a clear skies movement.
Okay, and again, he's promoting his movement here. But one thing that I find funny is he's like,
There in
oh,
Texas, go ask them. Go ask them.
he's saying go ask Rainmaker. Well, here's the thing. People have asked Rainmaker, and they've said we didn't do it, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But anyways, let's talk about these documents. We're on the library website for NOAA, library.noaa.gov, weather and climate collections, weather modification project reports. What are these actual documents? They are reports of weather modification projects that are required under federal law. So they have to tell the government what it is that they are doing and why they are doing it. Moreover, they give them general information, but you'll note when we actually look at these documents that it is really more of a project plan than a in-depth list of individual cloud seeding events. So what do I mean by that? Well, here's the West Texas Weather Modification Association's project report. It's being done by an operator contractor called Rainmaker Technologies. It's being done. The purpose of the project is rain enhancement and hail suppression, which I'll explain in a minute. Now look at these dates. They say 3/15 to 10/31/2025. Does that mean they're up there every day in that time frame? No, it absolutely does not. And that'll be clear in just a minute. So why do this? Why is this project being undertaken? Why is it being reported to NOAA? Well, what cloud seeding does is it takes existing moisture in the atmosphere. Let me emphasize that. Existing moisture does not turn a bone dry day into a wet day. That cannot happen. What it does is it takes existing moisture and it sprays silver iodide or other crystals into the atmosphere in kind of the form of dust that gives it something to cling on to, the moisture, something to cling on to form a raindrop and to then fall out of the sky. So it's only effective if it actually results in rain, which means the chemicals aren't going to stay up there in the sky all that long. And the reason why this is being done is for farmers. That the last thing a farmer wants is to have a drought followed by a hailstorm where you've got dry, crunchy crops that are then getting bludgeoned to death by, ice balls falling out of the sky. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to get it to rain and get the moisture, to come out of the atmosphere in a nice, gentle way before it gets sucked up into a thunderstorm and forms hailstones. That is what this purpose of project activity means. So where is this happening? Here's a map. The red area here is the West Texas WMA. Kerr County, where the flooding happened, is down here. Note that the prevailing winds in Texas do tend to either blow from the south or the west, depending on the season and storm fronts and whatnot. So the fact that this is to the west is significant. This green area is the South Texas Weather Modification Association's area. It is to the south, so that's also relevant. West Texas Weather Modification Association is using a single engine aircraft. Note that they are not using drones. The word drones has come up, and it's true that Rainmaker has tested drones in other areas, but this area is using piloted single engine winged aircraft. There's a pilot up there deciding what to do. There is a state licensed meteorologist licensed by the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation who is using data from the National Weather Service to decide whether to spray on any given day. They are specifically saying that they will not spray during bad weather or any time where the government is asking them not to do it. So this is not being done willy-nilly. This is being done with a significant amount of care, watching the weather, getting the latest data. Again, they say several times that they're getting the latest forecast from the Weather Service to make sure that they are doing things in a reasonably safe way. So, anyways, that's the document. I mean, it's not a smoking gun in the sense that it doesn't connect any particular event to this. It just says this is our general outline of our project, who's involved, and what we're doing to keep it safe. Um, you also have as I said, the South Texas project and similar generic dates that are kind of in there for the whole growing season. Again, because this is primarily to help farmers in this area. And they're also saying that they're working with the Weather Service. They're doing in this green area, also using single engine aircraft, not drones, and are not going to be doing operations when there is bad weather, um, both for their own safety and for the people on the ground, presumably. So you've got that now. Uh, you might be saying, well, they could have been out there spraying. How do you know that they weren't? Well, let me show you how I know that they weren't. You can look up on the FAA website the actual aircraft that are involved, and we can get the owner. It's West Texas Weather Modification Association. They own 4 Piper aircraft with these tail numbers, and then you can go in to FlightAware and you can look up um, the history of this aircraft. So let's see here. There's no flights in the last 14 days for 5141P. The history view here. All right, so one of the 4 aircraft not in use. 6909P, last time it was in the air was June 29th, which was nearly a week before the flooding happened. That dust is not going to stay in the atmosphere that long. I think most people who've looked at this would say that we're talking about a matter of hours, not days, for it to fall out of the sky. And again, that's the whole point, is you want it to form raindrops and fall out of the sky. 80, so none for 2 of the aircraft used by the West Texas. And so this last flight by the West Texas group was June 30th out of San Angelo. And so it probably wasn't that. Now, you've probably noticed that the South Texas group, sorry, this is the other permit. The South Texas group had a flight on July 2nd, and I think that's the one that has gotten the most attention. It is on this 8160P aircraft. And you can see this flight was July the 2nd, 2025. And it was down flying out of Kennedy County up toward Berkeley. This is, I believe, the radar at the time. Um, and so you can see its flight path there on July 2nd. But something to keep in mind is this is way on the other side of San Antonio from Kerrville. Kerrville's way up here, and Berkeley, where they were doing the spraying on July 2nd, is many miles away. And you say, well, maybe that cloud headed in that direction. Well, this is the weather radar on that day. And if you look in this general area here, you'll see that those clouds were mostly moving more or less due north up toward the Austin area, not toward the Kerrville area. Sorry, there's a little ad there. But point being, you can look up the flights. There were no flights that were over Kerrville or in clouds that were moving toward Kerrville at least 2 days before the flooding occurred. And it wasn't going to stay up there that long. And that's why you have every expert saying weather modification did not cause this flooding. You've got, again, it was Tropical Storm Barry, a lot of moisture. And I want to point out that this is not the first time that Texas Hill Country has had enormous floods like this. In fact, there was a flood in 1987 where campers also died because of a similar meteorological setup, not because of weather modification, but because this is just a thing that happens in this part of the world from time to time. So, understand your history, understand the science. you've got very conservative politicians in Texas. Sid Miller is somebody, and I'll state my political biases. I'm on the political left. I ran for Tennessee State Senate as a Democrat. I normally don't agree with Sid Miller on anything, but look, he's saying no, this had no connection with weather modification. Um, because he knows even though he doesn't use it, he says he relies on his faith, um, that he understands that farmers are using this technology to improve their crops, and he calls this flat out a conspiracy theory and says stop blaming others. Again, you've got all sorts of people who are calling this a conspiracy theory. You've got PolitiFact, you've got Snopes. Basically the folks out there who actually understand the weather in Texas. I believe this article has a guy from Texas A&M. Let's see. Let's play Spot the Aggie, or was it this other one? Yeah, well, anyways. Here we go. Okay, so we've got Andrew Dessler at Texas A&M saying, look, this complete nonsense. You've got Professor Niogi at the University of Texas at Austin, my alma mater, saying this is extremely unlikely. Ted Cruz, and again, this fellow's saying, call your congressman, call your governor. Well, here you go. Your governor and your congressman are saying, when you've got people like Ted Cruz saying that there's no evidence for this. So, it's like these people won't take no for an answer. And it's because they're relying on this faith-based conspiracy theory, not actual evidence. And again, you had this Augustus Dorico kid who's getting absolutely slimed and unfairly attacked, I think, because people don't want to believe that he has the best interests of people at hand. And look, as I said, I'm on the political left. I don't normally trust corporations. Okay, I think we ought to tax the rich. I think that our economy is getting screwed in 10 different ways by people with CEO in their title. But look, I'm also not going to just claim complete um, you know, faith in some theory that they're out there harming people without actual evidence. And I've shown you the evidence that there was no relationship between cloud seeding and these horrible floods. So I would ask that people be better. I know that a lot of people are just going to look at this and scoff and say, well, I'm, part of the system, man, or whatever. But look, as for me, I feel like I've got a moral obligation to say y'all are being stupid and to ask you to please stop. So thank you very much.